We are going to solve questions 5 and 6. Sorry, questions 6 and 7. But then the question 6 and 7, question 6 and 7 falls under the topic. Question 6 and 7 falls under the topic called comparative statistics. All right. Question 6 and 7 falls under the topic called comparative statistics. So it is actually 6 and 7, but I think there was a mistaken numbering. So they wrote here 9, which should rather be 7. So we're going to solve questions 6 and 7. These two falls under an managerial economics topic called comparative, right? Statics. Comparative statics. So the approach I'm going to use, that is what you have to mostly use to solve comparative statics questions. Very good. So I'm going to give you some steps, and I'm going to follow that steps to solve the comparative statics question. Okay. Oh, let me do all on the page. So watch the steps for the solving the comparative statistics. So I'm going to write it on the right here. So steps. So steps. One, right? Identify one. Identify the good or commodity in question, or commodity or commodity. So that's commodity, right? 2, you sketch the equilibrium. You sketch the equilibrium graph. 3, you sketch the equilibrium graph. 3, you identify events. The events identify the events okay, so you identify the events, right? The events, comma, the changes they cause, the changes they cause right? And whether they affect demand or supply. 4, the changes. Okay, let me write it this way. Identify whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply. And then you sketch the changes, right, in the graph or on the graph. Then 6, narration. 6 is narration. Or interpretation. Are you good? Are you good? Hello, are you good? Okay, so these are the 6 steps I'm going to choose to solve the comparative statics question. This is on comparative statics, right? So it's on comparative statics. Let me write it here. Comparative statics. So the first step is I'll identify the good or commodity. Second step, sketch the equilibrium graph. Third step, identify the events, the changes they cause, right? Whether they affect demand or supply. Fourth step is identify whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply. Fifth step, sketch the changes in or on the graph. Sixth step, you have the narration or interpretation. So whenever you are given the question for this, okay, what's the first step? To identify the good. So whenever you are given the question for comparative statics, basically when we say compare or when we speak about comparative statics, the main focus is you are going to compare, right? You are going to compare. You are going to compare. When you say something is static, at the point when there is no motion, right? At the point when there is no motion, or when something is stationary, or no motion, or when something is stationary. Okay. So in demand and supply, the point when we don't see any movement is when the demand and supply curves intersect. So at this point, you will not see any movement because there's an interception. So comparative statistics means that basically we're going to compare the equilibrium, right? Equilibrium is singular. Then we have equilibria as plural. Equilibria as plural. So equilibrium is for one. Then equilibria is for multiple equilibrium. Are you getting it? Okay, so that's what we're going to compare. So now that's basically, so we are going to compare as how the equilibrium. I want to talk about equilibrium. We are looking at the equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, right? How these change. how the equilibrium price change or changes, how the equilibrium quantity also changes due to certain factors. And these factors are the events which will cause the changes. Okay, so when I'm done with the question 6, all right, you tell me if you have any questions so that I'll explain. So now let's start with the question 6. It's not difficult. It's very easy. Only like I have to practice to memorize the steps. It's not that difficult. So question 6. Before we begin, what did we say that was the first step? So we're going to solve this question 6. We're going to solve this question 6. And question 6 and 7, as I said, they are comparative statistics questions. So we're going to solve question 6. So this question says, where do you begin from? So watch. You first identify the good or commodity. You identify the good or commodity. So how do you identify the good or commodity? Before you begin solving the 6, first go and read. First go and read the last question. Always read the last question. That's where you find the good and commodity or commodity here. Here. That's where you find the good or commodity. First go and read the last question. So question 6, I'm solving it. The step says identify the good or commodity. So it says, how will these events, I'm looking for the good, impact the equilibrium price or quantity of generic soft drink? How will these events impact the equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drinks, assuming that the lobbying has a greater impact? So I only need a name. The name of the good here is called generic soft drinks. That's a commodity. Why will this strategy help you? Because in some questions, you can have multiple products stated in the good. For example, here you have Coca-Cola, you have Pepsi. Sometimes you could see like Kente, and there will be another imported Kente. So how would you know which of the Kentes you have to draw the graph for? You find it in the last requirement. So always read the requirement first. How will this event impact the equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drinks, assuming that the lobbying has a greater impact? So here, the name of the product is generic soft drink. Always pick it from there. The name of the product is generic soft drink. Okay. So let's continue. As I said, we're going to treat, the topic is comparative statistics. So I've explained what it basically means. The basic way for you to understand it. So we have question 6. Now, so what is the name of the good? Generic soft drinks. Generic soft drink. Soft drinks. That's a good. Let me check. Yeah, generic soft drink. So I'm done with the first step. Please follow. It's not, if you're able to master, their steps are quite many because I'll be explaining them. That's what That is the reason why there are many. But if you master how I'm going to do it, it is so easy. So identify the good or commodity is done. What is the next step? I will sketch the equilibrium graph. So that's my next step. Let me go and do it. So when do we say in economics that there is an equilibrium? When demand and supply meets. When demand and supply meet, you say there's an equilibrium. Right, so this is supply, this is demand. So supply, demand. We say D0, right? S0. Then we say E0 here. Now watch. So now I've sketched the equilibrium graph. 2 is done. Step 2 is done. Step 3 says what? So you could see that from what we're doing, I've not even read the whole passage. I've not even read the question 6 passage. Just based on the last requirement, the last sentence, I've started working already. I don't want to read everything before I begin. Then step 3 says identify the events. Then the changes they cause and whether they affect demand or supply. So I'm going to do all these 3 together. Identify the events, the changes they cause, whether they affect demand or supply. So I come down. You can do some small workings below. Some small workings. So let me write here workings. Some small workings here. So on your answer booklet, okay? So let me go and identify the events and the changes they cause. So I come to question 6 and I'll begin to read. You are the manager of a firm that produces and markets a generic type of soft drink in a competitive market. In addition to the large number of generic products in your market, you also compete against major brands such as Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Okay, I'm identifying the events. The event cause changes. So suppose that due to the successful lobbying effort of sugar producers in Ghana, Parliament is going to levy a 1% pound on tariff on all imported raw sugar, which is the primary input of your product. I get it, of your product. It says that you are the manager of a firm that produces and markets generic soft drink. So I'm a manager of a company that produces this generic soft drink, which I'm going to study. So you can see we have generic soft drink, we have Coca-Cola, we have Pepsi. So the graph will be for which? It will be for the product whose name is in the last sentence. Always read the last sentence. So suppose that due to the successful lobbying effort of sugar producers in Ghana, Parliament is going to levy a 1 Ghana cedi per pound tariff on all imported raw sugar, which is the primary input for your product. So this is the first event. Before these changes occurred, what was the state of the market? The state of the market was at equilibrium state, which I have drawn, the graph which I have drawn, meaning that producers were willing to produce this number of units, or producers were willing to sell at this price of P0, and consumers or buyers or demanders were also willing to buy at the price of P0 and sell and also buy, right, at the quantity Q0. That was the state before the changes we are reading occurred. Okay, so let's go. So this is the first event. So being the first event, you know that it will cause a change. So now I come down. If you practice it, you just get it. It's not difficult. I come down. Now, event one. So then write, I'm doing my work. It's a event one. What events did I take note of? It says that there will be some lobbying so that they will levy a 1%, a 1 Ghana cedi per pound tariff on all imported sugar. So the event one here. They are going to levy what? The lobbying is for what purpose? It's for Parliament to levy 1% pound on all imported raw sugar. And this imported raw sugar is the primary input for my product, which is the generic soft drink. So I come down here and now I'm doing some small workings so that it will enable me to guide me. And I write here as what? Lobbying of what? Let's say tariff. Tariff. Why tariff? Because the company will levy tariff, the parliament levy tariff on what? Imported raw sugar. So this is, I'm doing my working. So this is a small lobbying of tariff on imported raw sugar. If sometimes you cannot identify you cannot write a name, you don't know which name to write for or the solution to give to the event, look at the last sentence. How will these events, meaning the events are more than one, I get it. How will these events impact the equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drinks, assuming that the lobbying, right? Assuming that the lobbying, so this means is this one of the events. So assuming in the events we cannot identify a name of or assign um, a description to one of the events because you have to write it in a very concise manner or brief manner. When you go to the requirement, it will state you can state the two names of the two events, then you can use them, or it can give you one and leave the other one. So here it says lobbying. So lobbying is one of the events. So when I come down, I've written my lobbying here. I've written my lobbying here. What are they lobbying for? Lobbying of tariffs on imported raw sugar. They want tariffs to be levied, right? A 1 cedi per pound levy on imported raw sugar. So let's go back to what the steps are. The step says identify the events, right? Which we have identified now. We have identified one. Let's make it one after the other. Or let's write all the two events. So that's event one. What is the second event? In addition, Coke and Pepsi plan to launch an aggressive advertising campaign designed to persuade consumers that their branded products are superior to generic soft drinks. So what name can we give to this? Aggressive advertising campaign by competitors. So event two. This is a small workings I'll do. Event two. Aggressive right? Aggressive advertising campaign. Aggressive, let me check the steps. Aggressive advertising campaign. All right, advertising. Okay, should write it. Campaign. Aggressive advertising campaign. That's event 2. So now let's go and handle. We've written the 2 events down. Let's go and handle. Let's follow the steps again. It's easy. What I'm doing is will make it quite long, but when you start to solve it, follow the steps. It will be very easy. Now we are on step 3. Identify the events, the changes they cause. What changes do these events bring? I'm not talking about demand and supply here. What changes what change will the first event bring to the business? If they are going to be, or if there is going to be a tariff to be levied, or if Parliament levies the tariff, what will be the effect? The effect will be that, right? Sugar, those for us, what will be the effect, right? Or what will be the change when Parliament levies the tariff? Now that they are going to levy the tariff, they levy the tariff on the imported raw sugar, as the producers of the generic soft drinks are lobbying. What will be the effect? The effect or the change it will bring about is that the price of the generic soft drink would have to increase, or we the producers, we are going to, maybe we will still import, but the price of the imported sugar will be higher, because when you're going to pay more to import, we have to include it in our production costs, and that also will lead us to include it in our selling price, and the selling price will go high. I get it. So the price of the sugar is going to go high, and it can also cause us not to produce more. It can also cause us not to produce more, because if the cost of production is high, because the imported raw material is high, then we may not be able to produce more. I get it. Or the price of the imported raw sugar would also increase. So now, having understood this, that's a change which the lowering of the tariff on imported raw sugar will cause on the market, or will bring on the market, or will be the aftermath on the market. Having analyzed that change, then what's the next step? The next step is identify whether they affect demand or supply. So this event 1, will it affect the demand for generic soft drink or the supply for generic soft drink? This event 1, which is going to cause the costs, right? Which is going to cause raw sugar, which is imported into the country, right? To have the price being expensive, because government has levied a 1 Ghana cedi per pound tariff. So I'm asking the class, will it affect demand or supply? This lowering of tariff, which is going to be implemented, the tariff which is going to be implemented, will it affect demand or supply?
The supply.
Good. So it will affect supply. It's not difficult. Just pay attention. You get it. If I'm doing it within some minutes, I'll finish it, because mostly in exams, this question is given about 5 marks or 3 marks. So it's not that difficult. So it will affect supply. Let me write SS for supply. So I'm done with step 3. I'm done with step 3. Let's go up. I'm done. So look at the way I analyzed step 3. I first identified the 2 events. Then I looked at the changes they are going to cause. Then I realized I also try to ascertain whether those changes will affect demand or supply. So the first one will affect demand. So I'm working on the first event. So here, I'm done with step 3. Step 3 is done. Step 3 is successfully done. Now, I move to step 4. Identify whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply. I'm using demand or supply because it affects them one at a time, for what the questions have been so far. So now, if it's going to affect supply, will it increase or decrease supply?
It will decrease the supply of the sugar.
The supply of the generic soft drink. We are analyzing supply of the generic soft drink. Are you good? So if it will decrease the supply of the generic soft drink, now the question is, will it shift the curve, the supply curve, backward or forward?
Backwards.
It will shift it backwards. So I can do something like this, remind me that a curve will go backwards. Are we good? Are we good?
Yes, sir.
I'm done with the first event. I'll repeat the same process for the second event. So step 4, whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply, I'm done with it. Because the events are 2, I'll repeat 3 and 4 for the second event. So identify the event. I found the event. The changes they cause. I'm not going to find the changes the second one will cause, whether that one affect demand or supply. So look at the technicality here. It's very easy. Pay attention. So basically, when you are able to identify the first one that is affecting demand, we are comparing two things here. We are comparing demand and supply, equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So these are the pairs you are comparing. So if event 1 has taken supply, definitely event 2 will affect what? Demand. If event 1 affects demand, then definitely event 2 will affect supply. If event 1 has affected supply, definitely event 2 will affect demand. But let's see, even if we don't know, let's see whether it is true. If Coca-Cola and Pepsi engage in aggressive advertising campaign of their products as being superior to generic soft drinks, what change do you suppose it will bring? It will cause consumers to purchase or patronize more of Coca-Cola and Pepsi products, leaving the generic soft drink not patronized. In other words, more customers will demand more of Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and they will not make demands for advertising soft drinks, right? Or they will not buy advertising soft drink. That's the change. Now, will that change affect demand or supply of generic soft drink? It will affect demand. I hope you guys understand it. Do you guys understand it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if it's going to affect demand, the next question is we go to the fourth step. So technically, if one affects supply, the second one will affect demand. We go to the the fourth step. Identify whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply. So these changes, which will cause more customers, this event, which will bring about the change that so many customers will go and patronize or purchase Coca-Cola and Pepsi and will not be buying the generic soft drink. And we are saying that it will affect demand. Will it increase or decrease the demand for the generic soft drink? Uh-huh.
It will decrease.
It will decrease. Don't forget, you don't analyze it as will it increase or decrease the demand for the Coca-Cola and Pepsi? No. Why? We are not analyzing Coca-Cola and Pepsi. What are we analyzing? The generic soft drink. So here we have demand for the generic, we have the supply. So whatever happens, you are going to look at how it will impact the soft drink, the product you are studying, or the product you are analyzing. Okay, so let's continue. So if it would decrease demand, which direction will the demand curve shift to? Will it shift to the left? That is, will it decrease, or will it shift to the right? Will it increase? Yes, class. Will it decrease or increase? Come again?
To the left.
It will decrease. The curve will decrease. Demand will fall. So to the left. These are my guides to fall to the left. So these are my few workings I will do on the same question paper for the examiner to see what I'm doing. I get it. All right. So now let's go on. Now we finished with 3 and 4. What is the next step? The next step says sketch the changes on the graph. You can say on the graph, right? Sketch the changes on the graph. We are going to do this. So the changes, before I sketch the changes, I'll go back to the last line, the last sentence, the requirement. It says, how will how would these events, the two events, impact the equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drinks? Assuming, this is what I need, assuming that the lobbying has a greater impact. So I'm looking at the magnitude of the impact, the magnitude of the impact. The two events, the event 1 and event 2, which one has a greater impact? The question says the lobbying, which is the event 1, has a greater impact. Is that correct? Good. And the lobbying, which is the event 1, takes the supply. So the supply is decreasing, and the demand and the event 2 goes with the demand. The demand is also decreasing. So it means the supply is greater than the demand. The supply. The supply. The graph is saying that what? The event 1 is more than the event 1, which is the supply, which is decreasing. Is more than event 2, which is the demand, which is decreasing. That's what the question is saying. So now I'm to sketch this on the graph. So I go back to the graph. So event 1, the supply curve, the distance between the supply and the new supply should be bigger, right? Because it's, and don't forget, supply is decreasing here. Supply is decreasing, and it will shift to the left. But from here, it's saying that supply decreasing should be greater. That's the distance between the supply and the new supply should be greater. So I'm using this. So it is my supply, new supply, S1. It is falling. It has decreased to the left. Then it says that assuming the lobbying has a greater impact, so the lobbying should be greater and than the demand. So demand is also decreasing. Demand is also decreasing. As demand is decreasing, however, it is not decreasing at the same magnitude of the supply. And it says the supply decreasing, right, should be greater than the demand. So I can draw the demand curve like this. Hold on, let me use another. This will be the demand curve. Use a ruler. So this is D1. D1. So look at the distance. It has also fallen. You could clearly see that the distance between the supply and demand, the supply S0 and S1, is bigger or greater than the distance between D0 and D1. That have established the fact that the event 1, which is the supply, which is falling, should be more than the event 2, which is the demand, which is also decreasing or falling. I've established it in the graph. So where do the two new lines meet? The two new curves, the S1 and D1, where do they meet? They meet at this very point. That's where the two new curves meet. So that new point is called the E1, the new equilibrium. Then on the left to the y-axis, it will become P1. Then on the bottom, it will become Q1. I'll show the arrows that there is a decline from Q0 to Q1 because it's going backwards. And the top, I'll also show an arrow that there is an increase in price. There is an increase in price. there is an increase in price. So now we come to the requirement that now after the analysis of the graph, we have to conduct, let's go to the C step. We have to conduct, what's the C step saying? Narration or interpretation. So the question says, how will this event impact the equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drinks? Assuming that the lobbying has a greater impact. I have analyzed them using graphs. What is the interpretation? What will be the interpretation? Now, don't forget, it says, how will this event impact the equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drinks? So from the beginning, we drew the original equilibrium. So how have these changes impacted the original equilibrium price and original equilibrium quantity? That's what we are going to write on. So the main requirement is, that is what we should do. The main requirement is the interpretation. But before you do the interpretation, you have to start from the first step. The main requirement is asking you to tell us how these events have impacted the equilibrium price and quantity. So it's number 6. But before you get to the number 6, you have to start from number 1, the first step. So now I'm going to write here the interpretation. So these are all my analysis I did on my question paper or my answer booklet. So interpretation. When you master the scale, you can do this within 5 minutes, you finish it, or within 3 minutes, you even finish it. It's not difficult. So this is the interpretation, then the C step. So I'll write the event 1 again. Now I'm writing well so that the examiner will understand what I'm trying to say. Event 1. What is the event 1? What's the title? Lobbying for tariff on imported raw sugar. So lobbying for what? Tariff on imported raw sugar. On imported raw sugar. All right, good. So this is what I write. This event caused supply of generic soft drink this event caused supply of generic soft drinks to decrease from S0 to S1. Sometimes you can say SS0 to SS1. It's still correct. Now pay attention. The question was saying, how do these events impact the equilibrium price and quantity? And here, you remember I told you that these guys here are in pairs. Demand and supply is a pair. Equilibrium price and quantity is a pair. So the first event, if one of the events affect demand, automatically the second event will affect supply. So you are done with this. It also goes with equilibrium price and quantity. If one of the events affects equilibrium price, automatically the other event will affect equilibrium quantity. So let's look at the events carefully and tell which one affects what. So if there is an increase in tariffs, right? If there's an increase in tariffs, what will it affect equilibrium price or equilibrium quantity? Will it affect equilibrium price or equilibrium quantity? It will affect equilibrium price because it will cause the price of sugar to the generic soft drinks to increase. So if the first event will affect equilibrium price, then we would say that the next event will affect equilibrium quantity because they are in pairs. Okay. So we go on. So don't forget, the first event will affect equilibrium price. The second event will affect equilibrium quantity. So when I say it will affect equilibrium price, it means that it will move the equilibrium price from the P0, the original state, to P1, the new state. So let's see. This event caused supply of generic soft drinks to decrease from S0 to S1, right? Causing equilibrium price. So you can write this in full. Equilibrium price, write this in full. To increase, right? From P0 to what? P1. That's it. I believe you are good with this. Are we good with this? Hello, are you good with this?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's continue. Now we go to event 2. Event 2. It said aggressive advertising campaign. Aggressive advertising campaign. Okay. Okay. So I'm just writing the analysis I did at the top, the workings. That's what I'm writing in words. Now I'm writing the workings in words for the examiner to know what I'm talking about. So this event, right? This event cost. The first one affected supply. So this will affect demand. Cause demand for generic soft drinks right? Generic soft drinks to decrease or to fall or to decline, right? To decrease from D0 to D1, D1, causing or changing the equilibrium, right? Changing the equilibrium quantity or causing the equilibrium quantity to decrease from Q0 from Q0 to Q1. That's all. That's all for the work. That's all. If you understand these steps, you can solve anything under what's the name? Comparative statistics, you can solve the question. Just the steps, if you understand the steps. So the last step says you give the interpretation. Okay, because you should find how these events impact equilibrium price and quantity of generic soft drink. So these are the steps. If you're able to understand it, that's all. Event 2, aggressive advertising campaign. This event caused demand for generic soft drinks to decrease from D0 to D1, causing the equilibrium quantity to decrease from Q0 to Q1. So the second event had impact on equilibrium quantity, whereas the first event had impact on equilibrium price. The first event affected supply and the second event affected demand. The first event had affected supply, decreased the supply, caused the supply curve to shift or move backward, and had impact on equilibrium price. The second event affected demand, caused demand to decrease, caused the curve to shift to the left or backward, and affected equilibrium quantity. That is all for the question 6. Any question? Any question? Are you good? Hello, are you good?
Yes, please.
All right, that's fine. So I'm going to proceed to question 2. I'm going to proceed to question 2. Okay. So you have to practice it with the steps, with the steps, with the steps. As you practice and you gain mastery, right? As you practice and you gain mastery that is in trying to, where you can use this to solve a lot of questions. Okay. When you come to the step 3, as you gain mastery, when you come to the step 3, you'll be able to identify the events, and straight away, from the event, you can tell whether it would affect demand or supply straight away. That's if you're able to use to solve a lot of questions. You can just identify the event and you would easily determine whether it affect demand or supply. Some questions, you can easily determine whether it will affect demand or supply. Other questions, you have to first look at the changes the event will cause. Then based on the changes, you can determine whether it will affect demand or supply. But let's say you're able to use this to solve a lot of questions, you practice on a lot of questions, you will gain the mastery of identify the event and how it can speedily or immediately affect demand or supply without noticing the changes in all questions. But in some questions, you can easily tell this event will affect demand, this event will affect supply. So that's it. Let's move on to the question 7. Then I'll close. Question 7 here is question 9. So let's move on to question 7. Then I'll close. So question 9 is also under comparative statics. So it will require a different approach. But it's the same, let's say we will follow the same steps, but somehow or somewhere we would not follow the steps anymore. And I'll tell you why. I get it. So what is the first step? What did we say the first step was? If you're approaching the question, what's the first step?
We identify the commodity.
You identify the commodity or good. So it's here. I'll be coming here often. All right, so let's go and find the next. Okay. Okay, so here in this product, what is the commodity? Where do you find the commodity from? How do you identify the commodity? You read the last sentence. You read the last sentence. It says, investigate the effects of this event on equilibrium price and quantity of what? MKM cocoa drinks. This is where the event is. This is where the commodity is. So we come down. We come down.
Please, your screen said show to load.
Come again.
Your screen.
The first step says investigate. Actually, that's where you get the product from. Investigate the effect of these events on equilibrium price and quantity of what? MKM cocoa drinks. You investigate that. Now, so you begin with, let me come here. All right, so let's start. Okay, so first, you begin with the name of the product. So it should be question 7. So I'm writing question 7. What's the name of the product? MKM cocoa drinks. So we write MKM cocoa drinks. I get it. Then what's the next step? Because you sketch equilibrium graph. So we come here. E0, S0, E0. Q0. P0. I good. Then what's the next step? We go and identify the events. Know the changes. Know whether they affect demand or supply. That's the next step. So first, we go for the events. So event workings. Event 1. Event 2. So let's go to the data for the question. So now that I've done all this, I'll begin to read. MKM Company Limited is a major producer of cocoa drinks in Ghana. The company, which is a major market player in the beverages industry, is a producer and distributor of MKM cocoa drink. The beverage is enjoyed by a majority of Ghanaians for breakfast and sometimes as dessert. To improve its market share, the company recently adopted a new technology in its production line that allows it to significantly lower cost of product. This event one. It recently adopted a new technology in its production line that allows it to significantly lower its cost of product. So what is the first event which has brought about the change? Adoption of a new technology. I'll write it there. Adoption of a new technology. That's the first event. Let's go and search for it. The second one. In the past, the health benefits of cocoa drinks have been unambiguous. However, recent published findings from accomplished scientists reveal that consumption of cocoa drinks rather increase cholesterol levels and increase the risk of what? Cardiac attacks. That is event 2. Why these events? These events can affect demand or supply. That's basically what is being said. The original state of the demand, original state of the supply. With these two new events coming up, they can actually affect the demand, the quantity people are going to buy, and the price at which they will be bought. Right? The quantity people are going to buy and the price at which they will be bought. So we need to actually conduct these analysis. That's why this event affects them. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So the next one is what? We'll say health complications or health effects. So either way you write it, that'll be fine. Health complications. Health complications. Or health hazards. You can write it either way. So having gotten the two events now, we analyze them. How do we analyze them? We go to we're on the step 3. Identify the events, the changes they cause. So if there is an adoption of a new technology, what change will it bring about? It says that from the question, it will cause cost of production to be low. It will reduce cost of production because of the new technology. It will reduce the cost of production. When it reduces the cost of production, what does it mean? It means the business will be able to produce more. The business will be able to produce more. So that's the change it will cause or bring about. Now, we are still on step 3. Identify the events, the changes they cause. But for the first event, you've noticed the change it will cause. Now, whether they affect demand or supply, this first event, will it affect demand or supply? Adoption of a new technology, will it affect demand or supply? Since it's the producers who acquired a new technology, since it would cause production to be low, since it will cause the business to produce more of this MKM cocoa drinks, then it will affect supply. Right? It will affect supply. So I've told you, if you're able to identify one of them as affecting demand, the other one will correspondingly affect supply. You need to identify one of the events affecting supply, then technically, the other one will affect what? Demand. So you are done. So if you've not got into the event 2, you already know that it will affect demand because the first one is affecting supply. So you write it down. Now let's go back to stage 4. Step 4. Identify whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply. So the first event, which is the event, will it increase or decrease supply? We've identified the supply. So if there's an adoption of a new technology, it will cause the business to produce more of the cocoa drinks at a lower cost. So as they will produce more and it's affecting supply, it means the business will supply more of cocoa drinks. So it will increase supply. If it increases supply, which direction will the curve shift to? Which direction will the curve shift to? The curve will shift to the right. It will go forward. We're going to increase supply. Now, the second one, the same thing. As the event one affects supply, the second one will affect demand. So if it's affecting demand, the health complications. Now, we are on stage 4 for the event 2. Identify whether the changes increase or decrease demand or supply. So, these health complications, because people are getting to be aware, or because people have been sensitized that cocoa drinks rather increase cholesterol levels and increase the risk of cardiac attacks, it means that the demand, that is a health complication, right? A health complication, what is the change it will bring about? The change that people will stop buying the cocoa product because they've gotten to know that the intake of the soft drink or the cocoa drink would have impact on their health. So the demand, it will affect demand, and therefore demand for the cocoa product will decrease. If the demand for the cocoa product decreases, what direction will the curve shift to? The curve will shift to the left. Class, are we okay?
Yes, please.
Good. But take note, now that we finished with the event 1 and event 2 analysis, I've told you they are in pairs. The supply is going with demand. Equilibrium price is going to what? Is going with what? Equilibrium quantity. So they are in pairs. So if one is affecting supply, the other will affect demand quickly. Let's move on. Now we are having the number 5. Let's sketch the changes on the graph. So this is the graph. But here, look at the difference between this and the first one. Here, you see the first one, the last sentence said that the two events, one of them has a greater impact than the other. But look at this very question, the last sentence. Investigate the effect of this event on the equilibrium price and quantity of MKM cocoa drinks. Here, it didn't state that one event is having a greater impact than the other. So in this case, with the steps, we will end at chapter 4. And chapter 5 will be the changes on the graph. Okay. So let's see how we're going to do the chapter 5. So 1, to write or to sketch the changes on the graph, which is the step 5, sorry, we'll have to analyze 3 stages of this. The 3 stages are 1. Stage 1. We will try to analyze that the increase in supply. What if the increase in supply was more than the decrease in demand? That's the impact on the supply was more than the impact on the decrease in demand. Step 2, we have to analyze what if this increase in supply didn't have a greater impact, but rather demand had a greater impact. That is what the step 1 is saying. What if the adoption of the new technology had a greater impact than the health complication on the demand for the MKM drinks, cocoa drinks? Step 2, we are going to draw a graph for step 2. Step 2, what if the health complications about the cholesterol levels, right, have a greater impact on the demand for the MKM cocoa drinks more than the adoption of a new technology had on the supply? Then step 3, stage 3, the third graph. What if there was a commensurate or there was an equal impact on both? None of them were the same. none of them had a greater impact than the other, or one never had a greater impact than the other. What do you say on that 3? So we're going to draw 3 graphs here, and I'll write them this way. But in exams, you write them one after the other. The first one, they come below. The second one, the third one, and you give your narration. So you give your narration, okay? Now you could see that despite the changes in the graph, the only difference has to do with the inequality. Inequality, I mean the less than or greater than. So look at here. Here, S is greater than D. Number 2, S is less than D. So if I'm reading from the right, the number 1, I would say S supply, this increase in supply is greater than the decrease in demand. If I'm reading from the right, that is the demand, the same number 1, the stage 1, right? I will say decrease in demand is less than increase in supply. When I go to number 2, stage 2, I will say increase in supply is less than the decrease in demand. Then I'm reading from the right of the stage 2, I will say decrease in demand is greater than the increase in supply. When I move to stage 3, I'm using equal sign. So I would say increase in supply, the impact of the increase in supply is the same as the impact on the decrease in demand. When I'm reading from the right, I'll still say the decrease in demand has the same impact as the increase in supply. Stage 2, the increase in supply has a lesser impact on the decrease in demand, or the decrease in demand has a greater impact on the increase in supply. That's for stage 2. Stage 3, the decrease in demand has a lesser impact than the increase in supply. Reading from the right, stage 1, the increase in supply has a greater impact, just like the first question 6 we solved, than the decrease in what? Demand. So I'm going to draw the graphs. So to sketch the graph, here we'll sketch 3 different graphs, in addition to the equilibrium, making 4 graphs. The equilibrium we always must say, because this was the state of the market, right, before these changes occur. So after these changes have occurred, the 3 graphs are what you're going to have. So let's start. So 1, I'll again draw my equilibrium price and quantity, just like the first one. So supply S0, demand D0, equilibrium E0. Okay, so Q0 here, P0 there. I good. And it says that the supply changes is greater than the demand, and it's increasing. So supply will increase to the right. So supply will come somewhere here, S1. Then the demand will be less. Demand will decrease. So let me use this for demand. It will fall. Demand will fall. So very narrow. This is what? D1. Here is X. There is Y. So it will fall. Where do the 2 new curves meet? Where? Which points do the 2 new curves meet? They all meet here. This is Q1. This is P1. This is E1. So what will be the interpretation? So after we sketch the graph, what do? We write the interpretation. We will do it for each of them. I got interpretation. So what do we say about interpretation? As the adoption, I'm reading it so that you write it. As the adoption of the new technology had a greater impact, right, on the supply of MKM cocoa drinks, right, more than the impact of health complication on demand for cocoa drinks, right? These caused equilibrium price. These caused equilibrium price to decrease from P0 to P1, right? And equilibrium quantity to increase from Q0 to Q1. As the adoption of a new technology had a greater impact on the supply of MKM cocoa drinks more than the health complications on the demand for MKM cocoa drinks. The equilibrium price decreased from P0 to P1, and the equilibrium quantity increased from Q0 to Q1. Are you okay? Are we okay?
Please, can you take it again?
As the adoption of a new technology had a greater impact on the supply of MKM cocoa drinks more than the health complications, right, on the demand for MKM cocoa drinks. These caused the equilibrium price of MKM cocoa drinks to decrease from P0 to P1, and equilibrium quantity to increase from Q0 to Q1. So here I'm combining how both of them affected equilibrium price and quantity. Are you good? At each stage. Unlike the first one where I'll analyze how each of these, this one affects equilibrium price, this one affects equilibrium quantity. I can do that here as well. But then I'm just combining the two events to give the narration. So this question, they might give you even 6 marks because it will involve some kind of work. So that will be the interpretation. Are we okay?
Yes, please.
So here we are combining both, different from the first one. Now the second stage. The second stage says that here the supply will have a lesser impact, demand will have a greater impact. So I draw the original. Always start with the original, S0. S0. D0. Then equilibrium E0. All right. And it says what? Demand had a greater impact than supply, or supply has a lesser impact compared to demand. Okay, so let me draw my supply curve. Okay, so supply will have a letter, and supply will still increase. That's the one thing you should know. Still, supply is increasing, demand is decreasing throughout all the 3 stages. You can see the supply arrow up, which is increasing, demand arrow down, decreasing. So that doesn't change. Despite the changes of the impact or the magnitude of the events on the demand and supply, still we maintain the direction of the demand and supply. As supply is increasing, demand is decreasing. All the 3 stages are the same. Only the magnitude are getting changes. So here supply doesn't, though supply will increase, it is very minimal, right? So small, just a small increase in supply. That's S0 up there. S1 here. But the demand will have a greater impact. So demand will come here. So look at it with the distance between D0 and D1. You see that one is huge or bigger or wider than the other. So demand is wider. So you have here as what? D1. And the supply to, are going to have just a drop, an increase there. So where do these two curves meet? The new curves meet. Where the two new curves meet? There they meet. Where they intersect, right? P1. Decrease, a decrease. This Q1. So there's the next stage. So we can say as or if the health complications have a greater impact on the demand, if or as the health complications have a greater impact on the demand for MKM cocoa drinks more than the impact of adoption of a new technology on the supply of MKM soft drinks, right? The equilibrium price of MKM cocoa drinks decreases from P0 to P1. And the equilibrium quantity also decreases from Q0 to Q1. Do you understand it? So if the demand has a greater impact than the supply of this same of the MKM cocoa drinks, this will be the effect. Because the question didn't state the magnitude of the change or of the impact of any of the events, right, against the other. Any of the events against the other. So we use three-stage analysis to conduct the three-stage analysis to give the interpretation or examine the impact on the equilibrium price and quantity. So over here to you write the interpretation very briefly, okay? Very, very briefly. I think with this they can give about 6 marks because it will involve some kind of work. Interpretation. Give it. Please, Inez, don't write the way I'm writing it. Okay, just do it. For example, after you finish it 1, you move on to 2, below it, 3, below it. Don't write it horizontally. Write it vertically in exams. All right. So the last stage. Then we close. I'm done. If you understand the steps, you are good to go. The only difference is the sketching of the graphs, the final graph, right? And the narration or the interpretation for this one and the other one. Those two are the only changes there you have. Okay, let's start. Can you see the yellow one, the yellow font color? Can you all see the yellow?
Yes, please.
So this is X. This is Y. Just practices. At least they might bring 1 or 2, any of them, but be ready for it's exam, so you should be ready for anything. So supply S0, then right at the top. And this what? D0. Then this is E0. And this what? P0. This what? Q0. So what do we do? It says the magnitude of the impacts on supply or of the adoption of the new technology on supply of the MKM cocoa drinks is the same as the magnitude of the impact of health complications on the demand. So here, the distances between the two curves will be even. So now, let's go. Supply. Let's assume it will still increase. So let's assume this will be our supply curve, increasing. You have to go with a ruler. And these diagrams, you use pencils to draw them. And the labeling, so that when you make mistake, you can be able to erase. So this supply, let's say S1. Don't draw them with ink, but the interpretation should be in ink. And then demand. The demand could also be, they should be even. They should be the same. One should not be greater than the other. They should be even. So demand will be something like this, very closer. This D1. So at least I believe if you use a pencil to draw it, right, it will fall on the same equilibrium quantity, the same Q0. I getting it? It will fall on the same Q0, but the price will not be the same. There will be a decrease in the price. So P1. So this will fall. This will fall. This will increase. Guys, are you okay? Oof. Are we okay?
Yes, sir.
So this will be this case. So what will be the interpretation? If or as the impact of the adoption of the new technology on the supply of MKM Cocoa Company, MKM Cocoa drinks is the same as the impact of the health complications on the demand of MKM Cocoa drinks. The equilibrium price of MKM Cocoa drinks will decline, will decrease, will fall from P0 to P1 at the same equilibrium quantity. Are you getting it? As the impact of the adoption of the new technology, I'm stating the event, on the supply of MKM cocoa drinks is the same, is the same as the impact of the health complications on the demand for MKM cocoa drinks. The equilibrium price of MKM cocoa drinks will fall or decline or decrease from P0 to P1 at the same equilibrium quantity. In other words, or will fall or decrease from P0 to P1, maintaining or holding constant the equilibrium quantity, meaning the equilibrium quantity will not change, or making steady or holding steady, or where the equilibrium quantity remains steady, or where the equilibrium quantity remains the same. That will be your interpretation. Very briefly. Are you good? That'll be your interpretation. Very briefly. You are gone. Are we okay? So that's what you're going to have. The three. It's not difficult. But just you have to master the steps. It's the steps which will guide you. If you're able to comprehend the steps, you can solve all questions under comparative statistics. As far as they are around these areas, you can solve them and analyze it. You understand it? And it's on analysis, so you should be able to understand them better. Are we good? Are we good? Class, are we good? Hello, are we good? Okay, so I want to solve a question. Okay, so let me bring it. So we are done with the comparative study, but there's one question I want to correct something. So let me bring it in and then we will finish it. It's not a difficult question. So let's bring up the question. So I'm solving only question 3. Okay, I don't have so much time to record videos, or except when I'm teaching, then I can record it. So I'm solving only the question 3. There's another way. Question 3. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. This. I'm solving question 3. So let me solve it on the right. The question says, consider a firm with a total cost. So let me write the total cost function here. Right? So consider a firm with a total cost function, TC equals this. The firm operates in a in a perfectly competitive industry and sells its outputs at the market determined price of P of 5 cedis. So P equals 5. How much output should the firm produce to maximize its profits? Pay attention. Maximize its profits. And then calculate the profit of the firm. So you can use 2 approaches to this question. Because the question says it's a perfectly competitive industry, or the firm is operating in a perfectly competitive industry, right? And we are also looking for them to maximize profits when it's a perfectly competitive market, right? At maximum, we will say MC is equal to P. There are 2 ways I can solve the question. I can use first method and this method. We will say in the perfectly competitive market, at optimal level, MC, which is the marginal cost, equals P. So when you say marginal means there is a change in the cost. There is a change in the cost. So by calculus, marginal represents the differentiation. Then what is the name after the marginal? Costs, which is the same as total cost. So it says differentiate total cost with respect to the kill in the total cost function. So I go to the total cost function, which is the TC, right? That's the whole equation. This whole equation belongs to the TC. So it is called the cost function or the cost equation. So it says I should differentiate that cost equation. Which particular variable in the cost equation should I differentiate? Kill. So I go to the cost equation, the TC equation, search for the terms with the kill. When I say terms, when I write A plus B is equal to C, A is a term of the equation, a member of the equation. B is a term, a member or element of the equation. C is a term, a member or element of the equation. So in all, this A plus B equals C equation, I have 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. And the owner of this equation is C. So it's C equation. So I go back to the cost equation. And in the cost equation, I identify the terms with a C. So first, 5,000. Does it have a C? Does it have a kill? I'm searching for the term with kill. I'm searching for the terms of the cost equation with a kill. So the first one, 5,000, does it have a kill? No. So I'll not touch it. I'll not differentiate it. 6, kill. Does it have a kill variable? Yes. So mostly if the variable, the term you are going to differentiate, so I'm going to differentiate kill because it has a says kill because it has a variable kill. The last one, does it have a kill? Yes. So if I want to differentiate the says kill, I ask myself, what is the coefficient of the kill? It is 1. If the coefficient of the variable I'm going to differentiate is 1, then the derivative will be the coefficient. Sorry, if the exponent of the kill is 1, and when it is 1, it is not written. So every variable you see which doesn't have an exponent written, it means the exponent is 1. So if the exponent is 1, then the derivative will be 6. Because the derivative will be the coefficient. Why? Because the exponent is 1. So the MC dTc over dk, I will not differentiate 5,000 because 5,000 has no kill. But says kill, another term, has a kill. And the exponent of the kill is 1. So if the exponent of the kill is 1, then the derivative will be the 6. So I write 6 here. Then I bring my plus sign. The next term, does it have a kill? Yes, it has a kill. So I'll differentiate it. So you multiply the 2, which is the exponent 2. You could see that for that term, because the exponent is higher than 1, they've written it there as 2 or squared. So you only write the exponents of the variables when the exponent numbers are more than 1 or less than 1. So if it is Q0, you will see Q0 because it's less than 1. You see Q exponent negative 1 because it's less than 1. If it is exactly 1 exponent 1, you don't see anything written there. If it is higher than 1, Q2, Q square, you see it. If it is Q4, you see it. Are you getting it? So whenever the exponent is exactly 1, you will not see anything written at the top as the exponent. All right, so let's finish it. So here, I'm differentiating the 0.03 Q squared. Since I'm differentiating it, right, I'll multiply the 2 by the 0.03. So it's going to be 2 into bracket, 2 into bracket what? 0.03. Then I'll say Q exponent 2 minus 1. Whenever I do this, it shows I'm differentiating. So I'm not going to write that in the solution. I'll do all this calculation in mind or using my calculator. So the exponent 2 will multiply the coefficient 0.03, which will give me 0.06. Then the 2 kill, when I take 1 from the 2, it will be left as kill 1. And I've told you we don't write the 1. So I'll just write says kill. That's what I'll write there. That's a kill. All right, good. So from the MC equals P, right? Now what is my MC? My MC is 6. My MC is 6 plus 0.06 Q right? Equals, what is my P? 5, right? Then I'm going to have here, this is a simpler method. There's another one, it is quite long. Then I'm making Q the subject, 0.06 Q equals 5 minus 1, minus 6. I'll move the 6 from the left to join the 5 on the right, grouping like terms. I'm going to have 0.06 Q equals minus 1. I'll divide both sides by 0.06 Q. Sorry, I'll divide both sides by 0.06, 0.06. Then my Q will be equal to, yes, my Q will be equals what? We're going to give the value. What will be the value of the kill? Right? Negative 16.67 units. Let me do away with the units. Then I'll put it in the jackets. Then make the quantity positive. So 16.67. That's the quantity here. Are you good? Okay. So now the question says I should find how much output should a firm produce to maximize its profits. So this is one. The output should be what? 16 points. So you can write in words. 16.167 units should be the output the firm should produce to maximize the profit. So this is question I. So this is question I. So don't forget, this figure here shows maximum or optimal level. Maximum or optimal level. Maximum. Maximum. Or optimal level. Now we come to the question 3. The next question says what? Calculate the profit of the firm. So it's very easy. Calculate the profit of the firm. So we come here. So that's II. So profit, let me use pi to represent profits. So profit equals TR minus TC. Okay. Do we have a function for TR or an equation for TR? No. So I'll have to create my TR. TR is equal to what? Price times quantity. Price times quantity. So what is TR? Prices, 5 cedis. Then what is quantity? Quantity is 16.67. What does it give us? Yes, let me find quickly. What does it give us?
83.
Yeah, 83.3 what?
33.
Okay, that's it. Now we go and find our TC. What's the function for the TC? 5,000. Is it plus what? 6Q, yeah. Plus 0.03 Q squared. Then we have here TC. So we know the Q value, right? So 5,000 plus 6. What is our Q? 16.67 plus 0.063 16.67 all squared. So just compute everything on the calculator. What do you have? Hey, hold on. There's a mistake somewhere. It's 0.03, not 0.63. So I don't make a mistake. What do you have for the TC? Yeah, who is that? Hello, who is that?
Three six seven.
Come again. 5,000.
108. Point 367.
367. So 37. Do you all get this figure? Confirm it. Is it correct? Okay. So let's assume it's correct. I'm using your figure. So let's assume it's correct. So we say profit equals, we go back to the, it says profit should be equal to what? Total revenue minus total costs. And we have the profits to be equal to, what is the total revenue? Total revenue is 83.33. 83.33. Then what's our total cost? 5,000. But there's another method I can use. I'll get the same value, but let's stick to this. 508.37. What's the final figure? Negative what? Yes. Negative
525.
negative 5. No.
25.
5 what?
25.
No. How is that possible? 83.33.
5025.04.
Come again.
5025.04.
5025.04. Okay. So it is 5,025. It's a loss. If I'm using your figures, so if your figures are wrong, then means the final answer is wrong. So that's all. That's all for the question 3. It's not difficult. So if there's a question 3 should be brought, it might go along with other sub questions because it's not so much. Are you getting it? So that's a question 3. That's all. It's very simple. There's another method which is quite long, but this is also another short method you can use. Okay, for the question 3. Question 3. Any questions? Question 3. Are you good? All right, so that brings us to the end. You can refer it. I'm going to upload it on the channel, the YouTube. I'll share the link. If you want to study it further, you can use it. So